Translated from the Spanish original on August 2021. Welcome to another lesson. This time I want to talk about Baal, the ancient god of rain, climate change and chemtrails. And how there is nothing new under the sun in ancient times. These gods that are not really gods did not exist. They were believed controlled the rain. Since the 90s there have been these planes that spray some chemtrails and people have not known what it is. Every day it increases more and more. At the beginning they told us that it was simply natural steam, that is, it was water steam, but it makes no sense because in certain circumstances it was impossible that it was just steam, and over time they began to take samples of the rain. They began to find heavy metals such as aluminum and barium. When they found that, they began to do an investigation of where so many heavy metals can come from of this type, with this trace of these metals, so that they can fumigate it worldwide. What they found was that the only source is coal power plants found in the US that burn coal and produce a toxic ash with heavy metals and even radioactive. And these ashes are a huge problem to get rid of this ash. So what they do is get rid of this ash by mixing it with cement, with gypsum for the house, with shingles for the roofs of the wall of the houses, and of course they use it to fumigate these toxic trails, which, although you may not believe it, is related to Baal, and I am going to show it. Coal ashes are produced in coal power plants. The majority, 30% of this ash, is aluminum, which is the main base of these chemtrails. Coal power plants produce the largest pollution worldwide. This is something that very few people know. What produces more than 120 million tons of toxic coal ash in the US alone. More than 50 million tons of fly ash are created in the US every year. 40% of this waste is reprocessed and mixed with cement, with asphalt, to with plasters, with shingles for the ceiling, with plastics and other unpublished uses such as chemtrails. This ash trash from coal power plants has a name in the industry, what is called a fluid fill component, as they name it in the industrial documents, and they sell it as if it were some product that they could use that is simply toxic garbage. 39% of the electricity in the US is produced by coal power plants, that is simply based on burning coal, that creates tremendous pollution. The biggest problem for these coal power plants is how to get rid of this ash produced by burning coal. Most of them end up in landfills, and the rest is sold to industry so that they fumigate it, and others to mix them with construction products. All power plants coal have railroads and rails which and can remove all these ashes secretly, and they are all connected to secret airports from where these toxic ashes are loaded to fumigate worldwide. That is why it is very difficult to detect where they get so much dust from so much ash. They simply transport it by train directly from the coal power plants to the airports, and from the airports they mix them and they spray it as if we were rats. In a US patent number 5003186 describes a program to reduce global warming by spraying metal oxides. That what they describe as metal oxides of aluminum is exactly what the garbage contained in coal ash from carbon power plants. According to the patent, describe the size of these powders of these metal oxides, and according to the description they have in the patent, it is exactly the size of what exists in these toxic ashes that these coal power plants produce. Apart from aluminum oxides, rain samples show that barium, not just aluminum, and barium does not fit in with this global warming project, that is, that patent. They have to reduce global warming is based on fumigating these coal ashes using electromagnetic frequencies with a program called HARP. In fumigating this toxic garbage and turning on an electromagnetic frequency, they can control the clouds and can move the clouds from one place to another, or they can simply cool one area or heat another, or they are playing God as if they were a god. But one thing is that barium is not a reflector of the sun like aluminum oxide is, so it is a mystery why they have barium, not just aluminum oxide. It turns out that barium is present in this toxic ash from the garbage produced by these coal power plants, but does not fit with the theme of global warming is simply that they come together. Another thing that I also noticed is that The acronym in for barium is Ba and for aluminum is Al, and together is Baal, Ba for barium, and then Al that produces Baal, that was the god of the rain. The ash that has barium has a little radioactive uranium. That can cause cancer. According to Jim Phelps, the father of chemtrails from the global warming program, global engineering, the barium is present in chemtrails because it helps remove fluoride from the environment, but is actually present because it is part of the coal ashes as well as aluminum oxides, as I say, apart from the fact that it turns out that the largest mixture is barium and aluminum that together make Baal, barium Ba, aluminum Al. Skeptics say that chemtrails do not exist because it would be impossible to transport so much ash mixture that they fumigate undetected, and as I told, this infrastructure already existed, and from that since installing the central coal power plant and the railways that connect the power plants to clandestine airports or commercial airports to fumigate this ash without being detected. These HAARP programs that are electromagnetic frequencies and chemtrails to control the environment are also connected with the Project Blue Beam, which is a project of lasers that they're going to use at the end of the end times to create hologram images, like the ones they possibly used during it on September 11th, that it turns out that many people realized that they were not really airplanes, they were holograms. All that is connected with this race. Edomites, the white race, wanting to be God when in reality they are not. Now we are going to look at a little history in the Bible of this god of rain and the environment Baal, and how there is nothing new under the sun. Ezekiel 28 verse 2, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, Thus saith the Lord God, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a god. I sit in the seat of God, in the midst of the seas, yet thou art a man, and not God, though thou set thine heart as the heart of God. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel, there is no secret that they can hide from thee. Talking to the Edomites, this chapter is parabolic, like many of the chapters of Ezekiel are, speaking a parable about the future towards the modern prince of Tyrus, that are the Edomites, the white race that here says that they think they are God, but they are not. Being a man and not God, with thy wisdom and with thine understanding thou hast gotten thee riches, and hast gotten gold and silver into thy treasures. By thy great wisdom and by thy traffic hast thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. Therefore thus saith the Lord God, because thou hast set thine heart as the heart of God. Behold, therefore I will bring strangers upon thee, the terrible of the nations, and they shall draw their swords against the beauty of thy wisdom, and they shall defile thy brightness. That will happen when the Third World War begins, and many of the countries are to turn against the United States to the They shall bring thee down to the pit, and thou shalt die the deaths of them that are slain in the midst of the seas. That certain people think that death in the middle of the seas is a reference to Atlantis, that in biblical times the old Atlantis was the first city of the descendants of Japhet back in Santorini. That was a very large civilization that suddenly ended when a volcano erupted. That is, it is a reference to a sudden end of a civilization. Right now we are going to read some articles about Baal. To summarize, Baal would be like the patron saint of a town. Let's say in Latin America, Baal means Lord. For example, in Latin America, each town has its Lord of such, Lord of this, and Lord of the other, who at the same time has his virgin of such and his virgin of such. At that time it was Baal, and each people had its Baal, its Lord. And if its Isis had its virgin, so and so. Nothing has changed, nothing more than Esau has taken these made-up gods that are not gods to a higher level, has created this system of HARP to control the climate of geoengineering, has taken it to a higher level where currently it can control the climate, it can actually control it, and has secretly named it Baal for what it fumigates on barium and aluminum. But this power that they have to control the weather as if it were a god, because obviously they are not God, they are using technology, electromagnetic frequencies, fumigating metallic oxides to control the clouds and controls the weather. Then they are not a god, simply men. Jeremiah 16 verse 20, shall a man make gods unto himself, and they are no gods. Therefore, behold, I will this once cause them to know, I will cause them to know mine hand and my might. And they shall know that my name is Yahweh in this article of Baal, in Wikipedia of what it says about Baal. That we are talking about Baal, in reference to the Canaanites that in the time of Elijah he was dealing with the northern kingdom and the king of the northern kingdom that had married a queen of the Canaanites Jezebel, then that is the Baal, as I tell you, each region had its own patron saint. This is the Baal that we were talking about in reference to the Israelites, and it says here in ancient times in the ancient region of Canaan it does not usually rain from the end of April to September. The rains begin in October and continue throughout the winter until April, thanks to which an abundant vegetation grows. It was believed that the changes of season and the subsequent effects were cycles produced by the endless conflicts between the gods. The fact that the rain ceased and the vegetation withered was attributed to the triumph of the god Mot, god of death and aridity, over Baal, god of rain and fertility, which forced the latter to retreat to the depths. On the other hand, it was thought that the beginning of the rainy season indicated that Baal, barium and aluminum had awakened life, which was possible thanks to the triumph of Anot, his sister, over Mot, allowing his brother Baal to return to the throne. Baal's union with his wife, probably a start, and there is the virgin, as I say. Each town had its Baal, its lord, patron saint, and some kind of virgin was believed to guarantee fertility for the coming year. Canaanite farmers and ranchers possibly thought that participating in prescribed rituals, a kind of imitative magic, during their religious holidays encouraged their gods to act according to the pattern depicted on those feasts, and this was necessary to have productive harvests and herds during the new year, as well as to ward off droughts, locust infestations, etc. So Baal's return to life to be enthroned and join his consort would be celebrated with licentious fertility rites, characterized by unbridled sexual orgies. Every Canaanite city must have had its sanctuary in honor of the Baal of its locality. Priests were also appointed to direct worship in these shrines and in the many sacred places that stood on the tops of nearby hills, and were known as high places. It is possible that inside these sacred places there were images or representations of Baal, while on the outside, near the altars, were the stone columns, probably phallic symbols of Baal. The sacred poles representing the goddess Asherah and incense shelves. One of Ras Shamra's texts mentions an offering to Queen Shaphash, the sun, and the stars, and another alludes to the army of the sun and the host of the day. Each locality had its own prefix or suffix in the name of Baal, which was usually qualified by a geographical name, as a tribute to the name of God. For example, the Baal of Peor. Baal Peor, worshipped by Moabites and Midianites, took its name from Mount Peor. Later, the names of these local Baal-s came to be incorporated, by metonymy, into the same geographical names, such as Baal Hermon, Baal Hazor, Baal Zephon and Bamat Baal. For the Canaanite there was really only one god Baal. Here is another very interesting article that shows the story of Baal in the Bible is below. Online library watchtower on Baal. Let's see him read what it says. Who was Baal? The Israelites came into contact with Baal when they arrived in Canaan around the year 1473. Who is talking about the Exodus found that its inhabitants worshipped a multitude of deities similar to those of Egypt, although they had other names and some different characteristics. However, the Bible indicates that Baal, Lord, was the main god of the Canaanites, and archaeological discoveries confirm his preeminence in Judges 2 verse 11. Although he was not the supreme god of their pantheon, he was the most important to them. For they believed that he had power over rain, wind, and clouds, and that only he could save people, as well as their animals and crops, from sterility and even death. Without Baal's protection, Mot, the vengeful god of Canaan, would surely send them calamities. The driving force behind Baal's cult was sexual rites. Even religious objects related to this god, such As columns and sacred posts had erotic connotations, it appears that these columns carved stones in the form of a phallic symbol a dick, represented Baal, the male part of the sexual union. On the other hand, the sacred poles were wooden objects or trees representing Asherah, the consort of Baal, the feminine element, 1 Kings 18 verse 19. Prostitution in temples and child sacrifices were also important aspects of the cult of Baal. 1 Kings 14 verses 23 and 24, 2 Chronicles 28 verses 2 and 3. The book The Bible and Archaeology says, "In the temples of the Canaanites there were male prostitutes and female prostitutes. Sacred men and women and all kinds of sexual excesses were practiced." The Canaanites believed that such rites somehow made the crops and herds prosper. That was at least the religious justification, though such immorality certainly satisfied the carnal desires of worshippers. How, then, did Baal seduce the heart of the Israelites? Why was it so attractive? Perhaps many Israelites have preferred to practice a religion that demanded little of them. If they worshipped Baal, they would be spared from observing the law, which included keeping the Sabbath, and a multitude of moral restrictions, Leviticus 18 verses 2 to 30, Deuteronomy 5 verses 1 to 3. It is possible that the material prosperity of the Canaanites has convinced other people that it was necessary to appease Baal. The Canaanite shrines known as high places, and located in the groves of the foothills of the mountains, must have provided a beautiful backdrop for the fertility rites that were performed there. Before long, the Israelites were no longer content to frequent these sacred places of the Canaanites, but built their own. They also continued to be built high places, and sacred columns and sacred poles on every high hill and under every leafy tree. 1 Kings 14 verse 23, Hosea 13. First of all, the cult of Baal was attractive to the flesh, Galatians 5 verses 19 to 21. Sensual practices exceeded the desire to possess abundant herds and crops. Sex was glorified. This fact is evident in the many figurines that have been unearthed that have exaggerated sexual traits and that represent sexual arousal. Banqueting, dancing and music prepared the atmosphere for licentious behavior. We can imagine a typical scene in early autumn. In a natural environment, satiated with food and stimulated by wine, worshippers dance. The fertility dance was meant to awaken Baal from his summer inactivity so that he would bless the earth with rain. They dance endlessly around the phallic columns and sacred poles. The movements, especially those of the prostitutes and prostitutes of the temple, are erotic and sensual. The music and the spectators encourage them to keep dancing. And probably, when the dance reaches its peak, he dancers retreat to the chambers of Baal's house to have immoral relationships. The book of Numbers 25 verse 1 and 2 confirm it. Compare with Exodus 32 verse 6 and verse 17 to 19, Amos 2 verse 8. You can read more here. We are going to see who triumphed. I do not know if they know the story of Elijah. That the challenge to this God who is not God, that he could not make it rain for 3.5 years, and then it rained again when he said he was going to rain challenged these prophets of Baal. They could not make it rain, could not call fire from the sky, they could not, so they lost. The prophets of Baal were killed, all 850 prophets of Baal. Let's read what it says who triumphed between Baal and the true God. Of course, the true God. The fight to win the hearts of the Israelites was fought for centuries. From the time they reached the plains of Moab, shortly before entering the Promised Land, until they were deported to Babylon. The lead varied over time. At times, most of them were loyal to Yahweh but often preferred Baal. One of the main causes was that they related to pagan neighbors. After their military defeat, the Canaanites fought more subtly They lived near the Israelites and encouraged these conquerors to adopt the gods of the country. Courageous judges, like Gideon and Samuel, fought that trend. Samuel exhorted the people, "Take away from your midst the foreign gods, and turn your heart unalterably to the Lord and serve only to him." For some time the Israelites heeded Samuel's exhortation and removed the Baals and the images of Ashtoreth, and began to serve the Lord alone. 1 Samuel 7 verses 3 and 4, Judges 6 verses 25 to 27. After the reigns of Saul and David, Solomon began to offer, in his later years, sacrifices to foreign gods. 1 Kings 11 verses 4 to 8. Other kings of Israel and Judah followed suit and surrendered to Baal. However, loyal prophets and kings, such as Elijah, Elisha, and Josiah, led the way in the fight against the cult of Baal. 2 Chronicles 34 verses 1 to 5. In addition, during this period of Israel's history there were people who remained faithful to Yahweh, even during the time of Ahab and Jezebel. When Baalism was at its peak, 7,000 people refused to bend the knees before Baal. 1 Kings 19 verse 18. Finally, once the Jews returned from exile in Babylon, the cult of Baal was no longer mentioned. They learned their lesson. Like the people alluded to in Ezra 6:21, they all separated themselves from the filth of the nations of the country to seek the Lord, the God of Israel. As you see, in ancient times, these made-up gods Baal was believed to control the rain. And in reality it did not control anything, because it did not exist, and the same today that this HAARP program, geoengineering and climate change with chemtrails, is believed that controls the climate, but in reality everything is the will of God that controls the kings of the world. Proverbs 21 verse 1, according to Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Who can think of fumigating the world with toxic ashes and waste from coal power plants? Only a devil, as Job 9 verse 24 says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof, if not, where, and who is he? Is if it is not this Vato, these Edomites, these gringos who fumigate the world with toxic ashes, if they are not the devil, who are they? Tell me. Revelation 11 verse 18, and the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come. And the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great. And shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. The judgment that will give a prize to those who believe, the Israelites, and at the same time will destroy those who destroy the earth, which are these Caucasians that think of fumigating the whole world with ashes. Revelation 19 verse 2, for true and righteous are his judgments, for he hath judged the great whore, which did corrupt the earth with her fornication, and hath avenged the blood of his servants at her hand. Isaiah 24 verse 5, the earth also is defiled, polluted, under the inhabitants thereof, with chemtrails. Because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. For Esdras 15:6, for wickedness hath exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. With these chemtrails and pollution in general, for wickedness hath exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled, therefore saith the Lord, I will hold my tongue no more as touching their wickedness which they profanely commit. Neither will I suffer them in those things, in which they wickedly exercise themselves. Behold, the innocent and righteous blood crieth unto me, and the souls of the just complain continually. Behold, the innocent and righteous blood crieth unto me, and the souls of the just complain continually. And therefore, saith the Lord Yahweh, I will surely avenge them, and receive unto me all the innocent blood from among them,